I sat across from my son Derek at my dining room table, watching him slide a check toward me. $10,000. He looked me straight in the eye and said the words that should have broken me. The ranch sold yesterday. This is your share. I need you gone by the end of the week. Go live somewhere far from here. I picked up that check, looked at the amount, and started laughing. Derek stared at me like I'd lost my mind, his face turning red with anger and confusion. You have no idea what I did 3 days ago, do you? His face went pale. Derek's hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. What are you talking about? What did you do? I leaned back in my chair, still holding that worthless check, feeling calmer than I had in months. I'm talking about how I knew, Derek. I knew about your plan for weeks now. His jaw tightened. You don't know anything. Beth heard you. My ranch hand, Beth. She was in the barn 2 months ago cleaning tack when you and Candace came in. You thought you were alone. You stood there in my barn, on my property, planning how you were going to steal my home right out from under me. Beth heard every word. She came to me that same day. Derek's eyes darted toward the window, probably looking for his wife's car. Candace was supposed to be at the store, but I knew she was likely parked down the road, waiting to hear how this conversation went. Even if that's true, it doesn't matter now. The sale went through. You can't stop it. I smiled. That's where you're wrong. 3 days ago, I went to see Howard. You remember Howard, don't you? My attorney for the past 20 years. We had a very productive meeting. Derek stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Thomas and I had refinished together 30 years ago. What did you do? I transferred the entire ranch into an irrevocable living trust. I'm the sole trustee and beneficiary. All the paperwork was filed with the county recorder's office on Tuesday. The deed now shows the trust as the legal owner, not me personally. Which means, Derek, that you didn't have the authority to sell anything. Your sale is invalid. For a moment, just a moment, I saw fear flicker across my son's face. Then it transformed into something uglier. Rage, pure, undiluted rage. You think you're so smart. You think you've won. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a document. I forged your signature on a power of attorney 6 months ago, Mother. 6 months. I've had legal authority to act on your behalf for half a year. The sale is completely legitimate. The title company accepted my authority. The buyer's money has already been transferred. $9,990,000. It's done. The deed has been recorded. You're too late. My confidence wavered. I felt my heart skip a beat. That's impossible. He threw the document on the table. There's your power of attorney. There's the closing statement. There's the new deed showing the property transferred to Westfield Holdings, LLC. It's over, Mother. You lost. I picked up the papers with shaking hands. They looked official. They had county stamps. They had notary seals. My signature was there, or something that looked remarkably like it. Howard said even with the trust, the sale couldn't go through. Howard said what he thought would make you feel better. Derek sat back down, his anger shifting into cold triumph. But the reality is, legal battles take time. Years. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney fees. You're 67 years old. You don't have the money or the time to fight this. And by the time any court sorts this out, the money will be gone. Spent. Untraceable. You'll have nothing. He slid another document across the table. Sign this. It releases all claims to the property. It says you acknowledge the sale was legitimate. In exchange, you keep the $10,000. If you don't sign, I'll make sure you don't get a penny. I'll tie you up in court until you're dead. I looked at my son, this man I'd given birth to 42 years ago. This child I'd nursed through pneumonia when he was 6. This boy I'd taught to ride horses and rope cattle. This teenager I'd sent to college with money Thomas and I had saved for decades. I barely recognized him. Sign it, Mother. Make this easy on yourself. Get out of my house. He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. You have until Friday. Then I'm coming back with the sheriff to remove you. One way or another, you're leaving." He walked out, leaving those documents on my table like a death sentence. 2 days later, I sat in Howard's office in town, watching him read through the forged power of attorney with increasing alarm. His office smelled like old books and leather, familiar and comforting. He'd been Thomas's attorney before he was mine, and I'd known him for over 30 years. "Johanna, this is serious. This is fraud, elder financial abuse. We need to file an emergency motion to void the sale, and we need to file a police report." He spent the next 3 hours drafting documents. We went to the courthouse together. We went to the police station together. I told my story to a detective named Marcus, who looked at me with pity and took notes. He said they'd investigate, but these cases took time. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt like help was coming. Instead, I felt a growing sense of dread. The next morning, I got my first indication of just how bad things were about to get. A courier arrived at my ranch with legal papers. Derek was suing me. Actually, his attorney was suing me. A man named Gerald Whitmore from Dallas, someone Howard said was known for being ruthless and aggressive. The lawsuit claimed I was mentally incompetent when I created the trust. It claimed I was suffering from dementia. It claimed I was a danger to myself. They were filing for emergency conservatorship. They wanted a judge to appoint Derek as my guardian, to have legal control over all my affairs. Howard's face went gray when he read it. They're trying to preempt our fraud case. If they can get a judge to declare you incompetent, then your trust is void, the sale stands, and Derek controls everything. How can they claim I have dementia? I'm fine. I'm sharper than half the people in this town. They have evidence, Johanna. Howard flipped through the attached exhibits. Statements from neighbors saying you've been acting strangely. A doctor's note suggesting cognitive decline. Photos of your house in disarray. Bank statements showing unusual purchases. I looked at the photos. My kitchen with dirty dishes piled in the sink. My bedroom with clothes scattered on the floor. My living room with old newspapers stacked on the coffee table. I keep a clean house. Those photos, I don't understand. Howard pointed to the date stamps. These were taken last week. Do you remember Derek or Candace being here? I did. They'd stopped by last Tuesday, said they wanted to check on me. I'd been out feeding the horses when they arrived. They said they'd wait inside. I was gone maybe 20 minutes. They staged this. They came into my home and made it look like I was living in squalor so they could photograph it. The doctor's note was from someone named Dr. Patricia Lowell. I'd never heard of her. The signature was illegible. The bank statements showed charges at a casino 3 hours away. I hadn't been to a casino in my entire life. I looked closer and realized these charges were on a credit card I didn't even know existed. Derek had opened accounts in my name, and the neighbors. Roger and Susan Palmer from 2 miles down the road. They claimed I'd come to their house at 3 in the morning, confused about where I was. That never happened. But Roger worked construction, and Derek had hired him last year to do some work on Derek's house in Austin. They're building a false case. Every piece of evidence is manufactured or coerced. The hearing is in 5 days. Howard gathered up the papers. We need to prepare. We need to show the judge you're completely competent. We need character witnesses, medical records, anything that proves you're fine. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something terrifying. In a small town like ours, Derek had connections. He'd grown up here. He knew people. And he'd apparently been laying groundwork for this for months. Who would believe me over my own son? 3 days before the hearing, my friend Mary Ellen came to visit. We'd known each other since our kids were in elementary school together. We'd been in the same book club for 15 years. She was one of the few people I thought I could trust completely. She sat in my kitchen drinking coffee, listening to everything that had happened. Johanna, this is horrible. Of course I'll testify for you. I'll tell that judge you're as sharp as you've ever been. I felt tears of gratitude. Thank you. I can't tell you what that means. She squeezed my hand. We're friends. That's what friends do. The next day, I went to my bank to get copies of my financial records, to prove Derek had been stealing from me. The bank manager, Douglas, met me at the door with an uncomfortable expression. "Mrs. Johanna, I'm afraid I can't give you access to your accounts right now." "Excuse me? There's a restraining order. Your son filed it yesterday. He claims you're being financially exploited by someone, and he had the accounts frozen for your protection." "Those are my accounts. My money." "I understand, and I'm sorry. But until a judge lifts the order, my hands are tied." I walked out of that bank feeling like the walls were closing in. Derek wasn't just attacking me in court. He was cutting off every avenue of defense, every resource I might use to fight back. That evening, Mary Ellen called. Her voice was shaking. "Johanna, I need to tell you something. Derek came to my house today. He had Candace with him, and his attorney, that Whitmore man." "What did they want?" "They offered me $50,000 to testify that you've been confused and forgetful." I told them no. I told them to get off my property. Thank God. But then, her voice broke. Then they told me about my grandson, Justin. You know he's had problems with drugs. They said he was caught with drugs in Derek's car last week. Derek said he'd press charges unless I cooperate. He said Justin would go to prison. Mary Ellen, no. I have to protect my grandson. I'm so sorry, Johanna. I have to testify against you. Please forgive me. Please understand. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, feeling more alone than I'd felt since Thomas died 5 years ago. My oldest friend, forced to betray me to protect her family. That night, Beth found me crying at the kitchen table. She sat down across from me, her weathered face creased with concern. Beth was only 35, but she'd worked ranches her whole life and had the worn hands to prove it. "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. About Mary Ellen, about the frozen accounts, about the manufactured evidence. "We're going to beat this. We have to." But even Beth looked worried. The next morning, Howard called with more bad news. I looked into Westfield Holdings LLC, the company that supposedly bought your ranch. It's a shell company. And the registered agent? It's the law partner of Gerald Whitmore. What does that mean? It means this whole sale was a setup from the beginning. Derek and Gerald orchestrated this together. They planned to flip the property for much more than $10 million. I did some research. There are oil rights on your land that were recently discovered. Valuable oil rights. They could be worth another $10 million or more. Derek stands to make a fortune. Over the next 2 days, I started feeling strange, dizzy, nauseous. I'd forget what I was doing in the middle of a task. I'd walk into a room and not remember why I went there. My hands shook when I tried to pour coffee. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. Beth noticed me stumbling as I walked to the barn. "You okay?" "I'm fine, just tired." But I wasn't fine, and we both knew it. That afternoon, Beth was cleaning the kitchen when she found something hidden behind the flour canister in the pantry. A small bottle of pills with no label. "Johanna, did you put these here?" I'd never seen them before. Beth took one of the pills to her friend who worked at the pharmacy in town. He identified it immediately. "It's a drug that causes confusion, memory loss, dizziness. Someone's been drugging you." We stared at each other in horror. Derek, or Candace. They'd been coming by regularly over the past few weeks, always offering to make coffee or bring food. They've been poisoning me, to make me actually seem incompetent for the hearing. The hearing was tomorrow. I walked into that courtroom feeling like I was walking to my own execution. Despite not taking anything Derek or Candace had given me for the past 2 days, I still felt foggy and weak. The drugs were taking time to leave my system. Judge Patricia Brennan presided, a stern woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an impatient manner. Gerald Whitmore sat at the other table with Derek, both of them wearing expensive suits and confident expressions. Gerald presented their case first. He was smooth, polished, and convincing. He painted a picture of a confused elderly woman who couldn't care for herself, who was making paranoid accusations against her loving son, who needed protection from her own poor judgment. Then came the witnesses. Mary Ellen took the stand. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She testified, tears streaming down her face, that I'd been forgetful, that I'd called her by the wrong name several times, that I'd told her confused stories that didn't make sense. Every word was a knife in my back, but I understood. She was protecting Justin. What else could she do? The social worker testified about the condition of my house. She showed the photos Derek had staged. She said she was deeply concerned about my ability to care for myself. Then came Dr. Patricia Lowell, the doctor I'd never met. She was a neurologist from Houston. She testified that based on medical records she'd reviewed, including notes from my primary care physician, I showed clear signs of cognitive decline consistent with early-stage dementia. I'd never given permission for my medical records to be released. My primary care physician was Dr. Raymond Castellano, and I'd seen him just 3 months ago for a routine checkup. He'd said I was healthy. Derek took the stand and gave an Oscar-worthy performance. He talked about how worried he'd been about me, how I'd called him in the middle of the night, confused and frightened, how I'd accused him of stealing when he was only trying to help me manage my finances, how I'd become paranoid and hostile. It was all lies, complete fabrications, but he delivered them with such apparent sincerity that even I almost believed him for a moment. Candace testified too. She said I'd threatened her. She said I'd said bizarre things about people following me. She painted me as unstable and potentially dangerous. Then it was my turn to take the stand. Howard asked me gentle questions. I tried to explain about the forged documents, about Derek's theft, about the manufactured evidence, but I could feel the drug still affecting me. My words felt thick. My thoughts moved slowly. Then Gerald Whitmore stood up to cross-examine me, and I understood what it meant to face a predator. Mrs. Johanna, what day is it today? Thursday. I paused. No, Friday. He smiled. Which is it? Friday. It's Friday. And what month are we in? April. He consulted his notes. Are you sure? I hesitated. The truth was, I wasn't sure. My mind felt like it was moving through molasses. May? It's actually June. Mrs. Johanna. I felt my face flush. The drugs. It was the drugs making me confused. But how could I explain that without sounding paranoid? Who is your primary care physician? Dr. Castellano. Dr. Raymond Castellano. And when did you last see him? I tried to remember. 3 months ago? 4? Can you tell me his office address? My mind went blank. I'd been going to that office for 15 years, but in that moment, I couldn't remember the address. Gerald pressed on, asking me dates, names, details. Some I got right, others I fumbled. Each fumble made me look more confused and incompetent. Howard objected repeatedly, but Judge Brennan overruled him almost every time. When I stepped down from the stand, I knew I'd failed. I'd played right into their hands. Judge Brennan took less than 10 minutes to make her ruling. She granted temporary conservatorship to Derek. She ordered a full psychiatric evaluation. Until the evaluation was complete, Derek had control over all of my financial and legal affairs. I sat there numb as Derek and Gerald immediately filed papers to dissolve my trust, claiming I'd created it while mentally incompetent. They filed a motion to have me removed from the ranch, claiming I was a danger to myself. Howard tried to reassure me as we left the courthouse. We'll appeal. We'll fight this. But we both knew appeals took time. Time I didn't have. That night, I sat alone in the ranch house where Thomas and I had raised our children, where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where he'd died in our bed upstairs, holding my hand and telling me he loved me, where I'd lived for 43 years. I thought about just giving up, just signing Derek's papers and taking the $10,000 and disappearing. Maybe I was too old, too tired to fight this anymore. Then Beth knocked on my door. She came in and sat down across from me, pulling out her phone. I've been recording them. Derek and Candace. Every time they've come to the ranch over the past 2 months, I've been recording them on my phone. She showed me video after video. Derek and Candace discussing their plan to steal the ranch. Candace talking about drugging my coffee. Derek laughing about forging documents. Candace staging my house for photos. Audio of them planning what lies to tell in court. This is it. This proves everything. The next morning, Howard tried to file the recordings with the court. Gerald Whitmore immediately objected. He claimed the recordings were obtained illegally without consent. Texas is a one-party consent state, Howard argued. Beth was present during the recordings. That makes them legal. But Gerald had an answer for everything. Beth was Johanna's employee, acting as her agent. These recordings amount to illegal surveillance. They're inadmissible. Judge Brennan agreed with Gerald. The recordings could not be used as evidence. I felt hope inside me. That evening, just as the sun was setting, Derek's car pulled up to my house. But he wasn't alone. Gerald was with him. So was a woman in scrubs, who introduced herself as Nurse Linda from Pine Haven Behavioral Health Center. They had a court order for my immediate psychiatric evaluation. The evaluation would take place at Pine Haven, a private facility 200 miles away. I was to come with them immediately. I can't reach Howard. His office is closed. He doesn't know about this. The court order is valid regardless. Derek's voice was flat, emotionless. Let's go, Mother. Beth stepped between us. She's not going anywhere. Gerald pulled out his phone. I can have the sheriff here in 5 minutes. If she doesn't come voluntarily, she'll be taken involuntarily. And Beth, if you interfere with a court order, you'll be arrested for obstruction. Beth looked at me with anguish in her eyes. It's okay, Beth. I'll go. I'll be fine. But I knew I was lying. Nothing about this was going to be fine. They put me in the back of Derek's car like a prisoner. I watched my ranch disappear in the rearview mirror as we drove away, and I wondered if I'd ever see it again. Pine Haven Behavioral Health Center looked pleasant enough from the outside. A sprawling single-story building surrounded by pine trees, with manicured gardens and a peaceful fountain out front. But the moment I walked through those doors, I knew I was in a prison. They took my phone. They took my purse. They took my jewelry, even my wedding ring. They gave me hospital scrubs to wear and put me in a room with a bed, a chair, and nothing else. The door locked from the outside. A nurse came in with a small paper cup of pills. For anxiety, doctor's orders. I don't need them. I'm not anxious. I'm not sick. She smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Everyone says that at first. Take the pills, Mrs. Johanna, or we'll have to administer them another way. I took the pills. Within an hour, I felt drowsy and disconnected from reality. Over the next few days, I met with Dr. Raymond Harper. He was nothing like my regular doctor. Cold, clinical, dismissive. He asked me questions I'd already answered, then wrote in his notes when I showed frustration. Your son is very concerned about you. He says you've been making wild accusations. They're not wild. They're true. He forged documents. He stole my property. Dr. Harper made more notes. Paranoid delusions. Hostility toward family members. I'm not delusional. I'm not paranoid. This is real. That's what all my patients say. He increased my medication dosages. The drugs made everything fuzzy. I'd sleep for hours during the day. When I was awake, I felt like I was moving through water. My thoughts were slow and thick. I met another patient, a woman named Teresa, who was in the room next to mine. She seemed completely sane. We'd talk during the few hours we were allowed in the common room. How long have you been here? I asked her. 8 months. My children had me committed to steal my inheritance. They claimed I was delusional. The longer I stay here, the more the doctors claim I need treatment. It's a trap, Johanna. Once you're in, it's almost impossible to get out. Her words terrified me. The worst part was the visits from Derek. He'd come twice a week with papers for me to sign. Papers releasing all claims to the ranch. Papers saying the sale was legitimate. Papers giving him permanent control over my affairs. Sign these, Mother, and you can leave. I'll give you $100,000. You can live comfortably somewhere else. Just sign. I refused every time. Each time I refused, Dr. Harper increased my medications. The nurses watched me more closely. My privileges were reduced. I realized what they were doing. They were breaking me down, making me so uncomfortable and desperate that I'd eventually sign anything just to escape. After 2 weeks, I made a decision. I started hiding the pills under my tongue, then spitting them out when the nurses weren't looking. It was risky. If they caught me, the consequences would be severe. But I needed my mind clear. I needed to think. Slowly, over several days, the fog began to lift. I started acting more compliant, more agreeable. I told Dr. Harper I was beginning to understand that I needed help. I smiled at the nurses. I participated in the group therapy sessions without complaint. They started to lower their guard. Meanwhile, I learned that Beth had been frantically trying to reach Howard. Howard was filing motions to get me released, but they kept being denied. The court said I was receiving necessary psychiatric treatment and couldn't be removed until the doctors said I was stable. Beth drove to Pine Haven and tried to visit me, but she wasn't on my approved visitor list. Only family could visit, only Derek. She camped out in the parking lot in her truck, watching the building, trying to figure out how to help me. Then, 2 weeks into my stay, something happened that changed everything. I'd been pretending to be heavily sedated, lying in bed with my eyes half closed. Nurse Gretchen, who seemed to particularly enjoy being cruel to patients, came into my room late at night with a syringe. Doctor's orders, something to help you sleep. But I recognized that syringe. I'd seen them use it on Teresa once when she'd been agitated. It wasn't a sleep aid. It was a heavy sedative that would knock me out for 12 hours or more. I waited until she got close, then I moved. I grabbed her wrist and twisted, sending the syringe flying across the room. I bolted for the door, yanking it open, running down the hallway in my hospital scrubs and bare feet. Alarms went off. Lights flashed. Staff came running from everywhere. I made it almost to the front door before 3 orderlies tackled me. They dragged me back down the hallway as I screamed that they were holding me prisoner, that this was illegal, that someone needed to help me. Dr. Harper appeared, his face hard and angry. Violent outburst. Danger to self and staff. Put her in isolation. They threw me in a padded room. No bed, no chair, just padded walls and a drain in the floor. They gave me the injection I'd been trying to avoid. The last thing I remembered before the darkness took me was thinking about Thomas and wishing he was there to save me. When I woke up, I had no idea how much time had passed. Hours? Days? I was alone in that padded room, with nothing but my thoughts and my fear. This was it. This was how I'd spend the rest of my life. Locked in this place, drugged into compliance, until I finally gave up and signed Derek's papers, or until I died. I'd lost everything. My home. My freedom. My dignity. I curled up on the padded floor and cried until I had no tears left. But outside that building, in the parking lot, Beth had witnessed the entire escape attempt through the window. She'd recorded everything on her phone, and she'd made a phone call to someone who'd been investigating Pine Haven for months. Help was coming. I just didn't know it yet. I'd been in isolation for 3 days when the door finally opened, but it wasn't a nurse or Dr. Harper standing there. It was a woman in a dark suit with a badge clipped to her belt. Mrs. Johanna, I'm Special Agent Laura Hutchins with the FBI. This is Agent Kyle Brennan. We'd like to speak with you. Behind her, I could see Dr. Harper looking nervous and angry. They'd presented him with a warrant and demanded access to me immediately. I was brought to a small conference room. I was disheveled, exhausted, and barely coherent after 3 days of isolation. Agent Hutchins sat across from me and spoke gently. We've been investigating Gerald Whitmore's law firm for financial crimes and elder abuse for 6 months. We know what's happening to you. We need your help to stop him. At first, I didn't believe them. How could I? After weeks of being told I was crazy, of being drugged and isolated, of watching everyone around me either betray me or be powerless to help me, why would the FBI suddenly appear like something out of a movie? But Agent Hutchins patiently explained everything. Gerald Whitmore had been running this scam for years. He'd identify wealthy elderly property owners, recruit greedy family members to help, forge documents, create fake medical records, and steal properties worth millions. He'd stolen over $40 million from victims across Texas. Dr. Harper's facility was part of the network. Pine Haven was where they warehoused victims who wouldn't cooperate. They'd keep people here indefinitely, drugging them, breaking them down, until they signed whatever papers were needed. The FBI had been building a case, but they needed more evidence. They needed someone on the inside who was willing to testify, who was willing to help them catch Gerald in the act. They needed me. I told them everything, every detail of what Derek had done, what Gerald had orchestrated, what this place had put me through. Agent Hutchins shared what else they'd discovered. Derek wasn't just a perpetrator, he was also a victim in his own way. Gerald had approached him 2 years ago after researching my ranch. Gerald knew about the oil rights before Derek did. He'd offered to help Derek get the property, promising him $3 million for his cooperation. But Gerald never intended to pay Derek the full amount. Once the sale was complete and the oil rights were transferred, Gerald planned to frame Derek for all the fraud. Derek would go to prison as the mastermind while Gerald and his partners disappeared with the money. Your son is greedy and cruel, but he's also being used. Once this is over, he'll likely face significant prison time. Agent Hutchins watched my face carefully. But we can help him if he cooperates. We can offer him a deal. I thought about Derek, about the little boy he'd been, about the man he'd become. Part of me wanted him to face the full consequences of what he'd done. Part of me still loved him and wanted to protect him. What do you need me to do? We need you to pretend to give in. Derek is coming tomorrow with the final papers. We need you to act broken, defeated. Let him think he's won. We'll be recording everything. When he and Gerald incriminate themselves, we'll move in and arrest them along with Dr. Harper and everyone else involved in this network. It was dangerous. If something went wrong, I'd be trapped here with even less hope of escape. But if I didn't help, Gerald would keep doing this to other people. Other families would be destroyed. I agreed. They returned me to my regular room. Dr. Harper, not knowing what I'd told the FBI, came to see me. He thought I'd been sufficiently broken down by the isolation. Derek is coming tomorrow. He has papers for you to sign. If you cooperate, you'll be released. I acted defeated, hopeless. I'll sign. I just want to leave. He smiled with satisfaction. Good. I'll inform him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed thinking about Thomas, about all the years we'd spent together on that ranch, about the life we'd built, about how close I'd come to losing it all. A nurse I didn't recognize came in to check on me. She leaned down and whispered, "Be strong. Tomorrow it ends." Then she left. I realized she was an undercover FBI agent. The next morning, Derek arrived with Gerald Whitmore and a notary public. They brought me to the conference room. Derek had the papers ready, a release of all claims to the property, an acknowledgement that the sale was legitimate, a statement that I was voluntarily relinquishing all rights. FBI agents were hidden in the facility, recording everything through cameras and microphones they'd installed overnight. Derek looked uncomfortable. He'd lost weight. He had dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, I saw something like regret in his face. Just sign these, Mother, and this will all be over. I picked up the pen. My hand shook, but not from fear, from rage at what they'd done to me, from grief at what my son had become. I looked at Derek, at this man who'd come from my body, who I'd raised and loved, who'd betrayed me in ways I never imagined possible. And then Derek did something I never expected. He put his hand over mine, stopping me from signing. Wait. Gerald stared at him. What are you doing? Derek looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. He saw how thin I'd become, how pale, how broken I looked. I can't do this. This is wrong. This is my mother. Derek, sign the papers now. Gerald's voice had an edge of warning. Derek turned to him. No. This has gone too far. Look at her. Look at what we've done to her. Gerald's smooth mask slipped, revealing cold fury beneath. You're implicated in everything. You forged documents. You committed fraud. If you don't finish this, you'll go to prison. Then I'll go to prison. Derek's voice cracked. But I won't do this anymore. You fool, Gerald stood up. You've been set up from the beginning. Did you really think you'd get $3 million? You were always going to be the fall guy. The only question is whether you're stupid enough to go down alone while I walk away rich. Derek stared at him in shock. What? I never needed you, Derek. I needed your signature on a few documents. That's all. The property was always going to end up with us. You were just a useful idiot. Derek lunged across the table at Gerald. Security guards who were part of Gerald's network rushed in. But these weren't FBI agents. These were Gerald's men, and they were rough. One of them grabbed Derek and threw him against the wall. Another grabbed me, his hand tight on my arm, using me as leverage to control the situation. Everyone needs to calm down. Gerald's voice was icy. Derek, you're going to sit down and keep quiet. Johanna, you're going to sign those papers, or things are going to get much worse for both of you. That's when Beth kicked open the door. She'd been in contact with Howard, who was outside with local police. The commotion brought everyone running. FBI agents revealed themselves. More agents poured into the building from outside. Gerald tried to run. He made it 10 feet before Agent Hutchins tackled him to the ground. Dr. Harper was arrested in his office, trying to shred documents. The security guards were handcuffed and read their rights. And Derek collapsed to his knees, sobbing, as the reality of what he'd done crashed down on him. Agents rushed to me, checking if I was okay. Beth pushed through the crowd and threw her arms around me. Through the chaos, I heard Gerald shouting threats and curses. I heard Dr. Harper claiming he'd done nothing wrong. I heard agents calling for backup and evidence teams. But mostly I heard Derek crying, saying I'm sorry, over and over again. Agent Hutchins helped me to my feet. It's over, Johanna. You're safe now. You can go home. But as I walked out of that building into the sunlight for the first time in 3 weeks, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, empty. Howard met me outside. He and Beth helped me into Howard's car. As we drove away from Pine Haven, I watched them load Gerald, Dr. Harper, and several others into police vehicles. Derek was in handcuffs too. Our eyes met for just a moment as they put him in a separate car. He mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." I turned away. Howard explained what would happen next. Derek's arrest, the pending charges, the legal proceedings to return my property. It all felt distant and unreal. When we finally pulled up to my ranch, I almost didn't recognize it. Derek and Candace had trashed parts of it, searching for hidden assets or money. Furniture was overturned, drawers emptied, pictures pulled off walls. Oh, and Johanna, Howard said gently. Candace fled town 2 days ago, took money Derek had hidden and disappeared. She abandoned him. Of course she did. Beth helped me inside and up to my bedroom. I lay down in my own bed for the first time in weeks and finally felt the full weight of exhaustion. But even in my own home, I couldn't rest easy. Because the next morning, Howard came back with more devastating news. While the FBI case will eventually void the fraudulent sale, it's going to take time. Meanwhile, Westfield Holdings LLC is claiming they're an innocent buyer. They have high-powered attorneys fighting the seizure. They're demanding the property be returned to them. But I thought Gerald was behind Westfield. He is. But on paper, Westfield looks legitimate. And they're arguing that even if Gerald committed fraud, they as a corporation can't be held responsible for the actions of one individual. They have legal standing to fight this. How long? Could be years, Johanna. Years of litigation. And during that time, you can't sell the property, can't develop it, can't do anything with it. You're home, but you don't really own your home anymore. I'd survived everything. The betrayal, the courtroom, the psychiatric facility, the drugs and isolation. I'd helped the FBI take down a major criminal network, and I still might lose my ranch. I sat in Thomas's study that night, surrounded by his books and his photographs, and I finally understood what true despair felt like. For 3 days, I moved through my house like a ghost. Beth stayed with me, worried I might hurt myself. But I wasn't suicidal. I was just broken. Howard filed motion after motion. The FBI assured me their case against Gerald was solid, but none of that changed the immediate reality. Westfield Holdings had deep pockets and expensive lawyers, and they were prepared to tie this up in court for as long as it took. On the fourth night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered into Thomas's study, running my fingers over his desk, his books, his things. I'd barely touched anything in here since he died 5 years ago. It hurt too much. But that night, I started looking through his papers. Not for any particular reason, just to feel close to him again. To remember when life was simpler and safer. I found a letter tucked into one of his journals. It was addressed to me, in his handwriting. The date on it was just 2 weeks before he died. "My dearest Johanna," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're facing trouble. I always knew Derek had a weakness for money, even when he was young. I hoped he'd outgrow it, but I saw signs that worried me, so I took precautions. In my desk, bottom right drawer, there's a locked box. The key is taped under the drawer above it. Inside that box are documents you need to see. Documents I prepared years ago to protect you, just in case. I love you more than words can say. You are the strongest person I've ever known. Whatever you're facing, you'll find a way through it. You always do. Always yours, Thomas." My hands shook as I found the key, opened the locked drawer, and pulled out the box. Inside were legal documents, deeds, and letters. And as I read them, I started to laugh. Not a bitter laugh this time, but genuine relief and joy. Thomas had seen this coming. Maybe not the exact details, but he'd known something like this might happen, and he'd protected me in a way that Gerald Whitmore and Derek could never have anticipated. 25 years ago, when we first discovered there might be oil on our property, Thomas had created a separate trust, a different trust from the one I'd created with Howard. This trust held only the mineral and oil rights, completely separate from the land itself. Derek and Gerald had sold the land. But the land without the mineral and oil rights was worth maybe $2 million, not $10 million. And without those rights, the land was far less valuable for development or resale. The oil rights were still mine, held in Thomas's trust, with me as the sole beneficiary. Derek had never known about this trust. I'd forgotten about it myself over the years, but Thomas had remembered, and he'd left detailed instructions. There was more. Thomas had documented Derek's character problems over the years, his gambling debts in college, his failed business ventures that Thomas had secretly bailed him out of, his pattern of lying and manipulation. Thomas had even named a successor trustee for his trust, someone who could step in if I needed help. Judge Martin Andrews, Thomas's old friend from law school, who now sat on a circuit court bench 3 counties over. I gathered everything and called Howard at 6 in the morning. By noon, we were presenting the new evidence to the court and the FBI. By evening, everything had changed. Westfield Holdings, upon learning that the mineral and oil rights were separate and still belonged to me, immediately withdrew their claim to the property. Without the oil rights, they had no interest in a legal battle over land that wasn't worth their trouble. Judge Martin Andrews reviewed the case and filed a brief supporting the invalidation of the fraudulent sale. His reputation carried weight, and suddenly other judges were taking notice. Within a week, the sale was officially voided. The property was returned to my trust. Derek's forged power of attorney was declared void. All of Gerald's machinations came crashing down. The FBI's case against Gerald Whitmore moved forward rapidly. With testimony from me, Teresa, and 6 other victims they'd identified, along with the recordings from the attempted signing at Pine Haven, they had everything they needed. Gerald was indicted on 47 counts of fraud, elder abuse, forgery, and racketeering. He faced 30 years in federal prison, at minimum. Dr. Harper was indicted on 23 counts of false imprisonment, fraud, and conspiracy. He'd lose his medical license and face 15 years in prison. Judge Patricia Brennan, the judge who'd ruled in Derek's favor, was investigated. Evidence emerged that Gerald's law firm had donated heavily to her campaign. She resigned from the bench and faced ethics charges. 6 other people in Gerald's network were arrested, including 3 attorneys, 2 doctors, and the administrator of Pinehaven. The whole criminal enterprise collapsed. And Derek, my son, he pleaded guilty to fraud, forgery, and elder abuse charges. Because he'd cooperated with the FBI and testified against Gerald, the prosecutor offered him a reduced sentence. 5 years in federal prison instead of 20. Before he was sent away, he asked to see me one last time. I agreed to visit him. The county jail was cold and gray. I sat across from Derek in a small visiting room, separated by a plexiglass barrier, speaking through phones. He looked terrible. Prison orange didn't suit him. He'd lost more weight. His eyes were hollow. I don't know what to say. His voice cracked. I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it. No, it doesn't. Gerald got in my head. He made me believe that you'd die soon anyway, and I was just getting my inheritance a little early. He made it sound reasonable. And Candace, she kept pushing me, telling me we deserved the money. He paused. But that's all excuses. The truth is, I was greedy. I was selfish. I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as an obstacle to what I wanted. Tears ran down his face. I put you through hell. I drugged you. I tried to steal everything Dad built, everything you worked for. I let them lock you up in that place. I'm a monster. I sat there looking at my son, this man who'd caused me so much pain, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of sad understanding. Your father would be heartbroken to see what you've become. I know. Derek sobbed openly. I'm so sorry, Mom. Is there any chance you could ever forgive me? I was quiet for a long moment. Eventually, maybe. Forgiveness takes time, and it doesn't erase consequences. You have 5 years in prison ahead of you. 5 years to think about what you did. 5 years to decide what kind of man you want to be when you get out. Will you visit me while I'm in there? I don't know, Derek. I honestly don't know. I understand. He wiped his eyes. For what it's worth, Dad would be proud of you. How you fought back. How you survived. You're stronger than anyone I've ever known. I didn't feel strong. I felt tired and sad and older than my 67 years. I stood to leave. Mom, wait. Derek pressed his hand against the plexiglass. I know I don't deserve to ask this, but when I get out, could I maybe come home? Not to live, just to visit, to try to make amends? I looked at him for a long moment. If you do the work, if you really change, if you become the man your father hoped you'd be, then maybe. But Derek, I need you to understand something. You're my son, and I'll always love you in some way. But you broke something between us that might never fully heal. I know. I left him there and didn't look back. 6 months later, I stood on my front porch watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of orange and pink. The ranch looked better than it had in years. Beth and I had repaired everything Derek and Candace had damaged. We'd hired 2 new ranch hands. The cattle were healthy and the horses were thriving. The oil company that had been secretly working with Gerald was gone, replaced by a legitimate company that treated me fairly. The royalty checks started coming in monthly. Not the fortune Gerald had promised Derek, but enough to secure my financial future and then some. I used some of that money to establish the Thomas Memorial Foundation for Elder Financial Abuse Prevention. We helped elderly victims navigate the legal system. We provided resources and support. We advocated for stronger laws. The foundation became my new purpose. Agent Hutchins visited one afternoon to tell me that my case had helped them break open a network larger than they'd imagined. 14 elderly victims were getting their properties and money back. 6 additional criminals had been charged. My courage had rippled outward, helping people I'd never meet. Beth became more than an employee. I made her a partner in the ranch operation and gave her a share of the profits. I deeded her 20 acres on the eastern edge of the property where she could build her own house someday. She cried when I told her. You saved my life, I said. This doesn't come close to repaying that debt. You don't owe me anything, Johanna. That's what family does. And she was right. She was more family to me than Derek had ever been. Mary Ellen came by to apologize again. I understood why she'd testified against me. I understood she'd been trying to protect her grandson. Our friendship was damaged but not destroyed. We started having coffee together again, slowly rebuilding trust. I began speaking publicly about my experience. I testified before the state legislature about the need for better protections for seniors. A new law was passed, called Thomas's Law, making elder financial abuse penalties more severe and creating better safeguards against conservatorship abuse. One evening, as I sat in Thomas's study going through his papers one more time, I found one final letter I'd missed before. It was dated just days before he died. Johanna, my love, if you're reading this, you've survived whatever storm came your way. I knew you would. You've always been the strongest person I know. Even when you don't feel strong, I want you to know that every day I spent with you was a gift. Every morning I woke up next to you. Every evening we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Every moment, whether joyful or difficult, was better because we faced it together. If Derek caused you pain, remember that he's fighting his own demons. Love him if you can, but protect yourself first. You don't owe anyone your destruction, not even your children. Live fully, my darling. Don't just survive, but thrive. Find joy again. Help others the way you've always helped people. Be the light in someone else's darkness. And when your time comes, know that I'll be waiting for you. We'll sit on a porch somewhere beyond this world, watching sunsets together for eternity. You are, and always will be, the love of my life. Thomas. I pressed that letter to my chest and cried. Not tears of sadness, but of gratitude. Gratitude that I'd had 45 years with a man who loved me so completely. Gratitude that he'd protected me, even after death. Gratitude that I'd survived and come out stronger. That $10,000 check Derek had given me hung framed in Thomas's study. I kept it as a reminder that people will try to reduce your worth to a dollar amount. They'll try to define you by what they can take from you. But your value isn't measured in money or property. It's measured in character, courage, and the strength to stand up when everything tries to knock you down. Derek was released from prison after serving 4 years with good behavior. He called me the day he got out. We talked for a few minutes. He was living in a halfway house in Houston, working construction, going to therapy, trying to rebuild his life. Can I come visit the ranch sometime? He asked. Not yet, I told him. But keep doing the work, keep being better, and maybe someday. He accepted that. A year later, he did come visit, just for an afternoon. We sat on the porch, the way Thomas and I used to do. We didn't talk about what had happened. We talked about small things. The weather, the cattle, the new foal that had been born that spring. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. But it was a beginning, a tiny step towards something that might, someday, resemble healing. Beth joined us on the porch with 3 glasses of lemonade. We sat together as the sun set, 3 people who'd survived a war and were learning to live with the scars. I'm 73 now. My hair is completely white. My hands are more weathered than ever. But I wake up every morning in my own home, on my own land, living life on my own terms. The ranch is thriving. The foundation is helping people. Beth is building her house on the property I gave her, and I'm at peace. Not because everything is perfect. Not because the pain of what Derek did has disappeared, but because I survived. I fought back. I won. And I used that victory to help others fight their own battles. That's the real triumph. Not just surviving, but using your survival to make the world a little bit better for the next person who's facing their darkest hour. Thomas would be proud. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever faced a moment when someone you trusted betrayed you? When everything you built seemed to crumble? How did you find the strength to keep going? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph. And share this with someone who needs to know that, no matter how dark things get, there's always a way forward. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to face whatever battles life brings you, and may you always remember that you're stronger than you think. God bless, and keep standing tall.